video now of how to do all of the things on your calculator using a TI-83, 84-ish calculator. All this Chapter 5 quadratics will talk about graphing and how to do your window and your roots and your vertices and other solutions. How to find factors if you want help with that, working with imaginary numbers and doing the quadratic formula. We'll start with graphing. I made a pretty dirty problem. It's not going to come out super clean and pretty, just so that I can kind of show us how to do everything. I'm going to graph the equation y equals negative 5x squared plus 18x plus 30. When I graph this, it's not going to show me the vertex. I can actually see these roots pretty well. Usually you can see the roots because having a window that goes from an x value of negative 10 to a y value of, from x of negative 10 to positive 10, that'll usually cover your roots. You can usually see those, but you can't always see the vertex, which is going to be like way up here somewhere. So we need to change our window. If you do the zoom thing, where you try and zoom out over and over, that's not very ideal. Usually it gets really, really far zoomed out. And if you do the zoom thing where you try and do zoom fit, which is the 0 option, instead of scrolling all the way down, I scrolled up a few times. Zoom fit, if you're desperate, can sometimes get you a good picture, but it's honestly usually not that great. What you really want to do is look at your equation and understand things about it. So for example, before I ever saw the graph, I can look at this equation and I can tell the graph is going to go down. I can tell that it has a y-intercept of 30. So if it has a y-intercept of 30 and it's pointing down, I know the vertex has to be higher than 30. I could find the highest point by calculating it by doing negative b over 2a, which is 18 over negative 10, which is negative 1.8. I could actually plug a negative 1.8 in for x to calculate this if I wanted to. But if I go to my table, I can see automatically that my highest point right now is around 46. So knowing that the graph is pointing down, knowing that to go to at least 30, and that the highest point I see here is 46, having the window go to a y value, a y maximum of like 50, will probably take care of it, but to be safe, I'll just go to 75, because why not? And so for the y minimum, this doesn't really matter. I think I'll go to negative 10, because I don't want to go too far down, but I still want to see the x-axis. For the y's, negative 10 to 10 is usually good. So these numbers aren't always going to be the same things everywhere. The y-mins are often different, and it's not always going to make a little square when you graph it. That's okay. You just want to have an idea of how this looks. If you can see your y-intercept, know your direction, maybe look at your table, and you can right now I can scroll on this up and down. All of these things can help me see what my highest and lowest values are. So now when I graph it, I've got a pretty good little curve. First I want to find the vertex. On my calculator, if I do second trace, that pulls up calc. This graph has a maximum because the graph was pointing down. It has a maximum value. So if I want to calculate the maximum, I go to this fourth option, hit enter. It says left bound. That just means get this little spider on the left side of this hill, and I press enter. Then it says right down, so right bound. I'll scroll to the right to get the spider on the right side of that hill, press enter. It says guess, ignore that, press enter. There's my vertex, 1.8, comma 46.2. If the graph is pointing up instead of down, then I would go and I would find the minimum instead of the maximum. Next I'm going to find the roots, or the zeros, so I go to 0 and I hit enter and it takes me to my graph and it says left bound. Now this is where my window isn't being super helpful, because I can see the x-axis right now, but just barely. So I'm going to take my window and have it go down way further. Now I can see things much more clearly, so when I pull up my 0, when it says left bound, I can see here, there's my left bound. I want to be on the left side of this, not above or below, but think left to right. I want to be on the left side of it. Press enter, that tells me where I pressed enter. Scroll to the right, try to be on the right side, but not over this hill if you can help it, and press enter. It says guess, skip that. One of the roots is negative 1.23. Kind of a fun number. So now I'll go find the other one. I do it again. Second calc the 0, scroll to the right. I want to be on the left side of this, so I press enter. I want to go to the right side. Suppose I pressed over so many times that I'm off screen. I can still see where the x and y coordinates that I'm on are, so I can still see how far over I'm going. Right now I'm at 7, negative 113. I don't need to be that far negative, just a little bit negative. One of them has to be a positive y value. One of them has to be a negative y value. As long as I've done that, I've done enough. So I press enter again. It says guess, ignore that. This is at 4.4 comma 0. Now, suppose with this same equation, negative 5x squared plus 18x plus 30, I wanted to find when this equation equals 20. Well, basically, this y value here got replaced with a 20. So I can go to my y-axis, or go to my y equals menu, type in a 20, and it'll show me this graph here. There's two lines now, and where these intersect is where the y value equals 20. So I go to second calc, find the intersection of this line, and I try to go to the left side of this intersection and press enter. And it's just going to jump over to the other line that I'm on. As long as I'm on the left side, that's okay. Press enter again. It shows me that point. One of the solutions is x equals negative 0.49. Obviously, if x is negative 4.9, y is 20, and that's what I want. I want x to be negative 4.9 so that y is 20. Now I'll do the other intersection. Go way over here, over the hill, press enter. This is going to be right around it, and that's kind of nice. Press enter again. Ignore the guess. 4.09 is the other solution. Oops. That is the graphing stuff. Remember, you can always look at your table to find values. If you want to find, right now this is showing me the y2 values over here. If you want to change this to where you can input things on your own, do second window, and that will give you your table setup. You want the independent variable to say ask, keep the dependent on auto. Now when I go back to my table, I can type stuff in. And for the record, another way to solve this problem would be to subtract 20 from both sides. So I could clear this, but subtract a 20 from here. Subtract 20 from both sides here gives me 0 equals negative 5x squared plus 18x plus 10. The graph now has been moved down a little bit. Remember, the original one was higher. This one's been moved down 10. Now I could just find the zeros if I wanted to. Okay, next thing. Finding factors. Some of you have been struggling with finding factors when you're doing your factoring. Ha! I couldn't find the word factoring. That's funny. Suppose I want to find the factors of 360. I can do 360 divided by x. And this will take x, and as the machine runs through numbers of x, it'll do division of 360 divided by x. When I go to my table, it does 360 divided by 3 is 120, 360 divided by negative 5 is negative 72. And this is where it's actually nice to have this on auto instead of ask. If I take the window and do second window to put my table set and put it on auto, now I can see that 360 divided by negative 4 is negative 90, 360 divided by negative 3 is negative 120. I can find all these factors, so I know that 360 can't divide by 7 to a whole number, and 360 can't divide by 11 to a whole number, so you can find all your factors this way. Next, imaginary numbers. If I do the square root of negative 1 in here, it says error. Whenever your calculator says error, don't just hit quit and don't just hit go to. Read what it says. This is saying it's a non-real answer. It's imaginary. It's not real. If you click go to, not quit, but go to, it will go to the error. It's saying this can't work right now. That's okay. The parentheses is not going to help anything. But if I go to my mode, right now my mode is on real. If I change it to a plus bi, now I can do it. The square root of negative 1 is I. And in fact, even if I don't change my mode, I can still do things like 2 plus 3 I. Second period is I, which I'm doing right here. 2 plus 3i times 5 minus I. Is that 13 plus 13i? It does the foiling for me. I'm actually not sure what happens if I do this in my calculator. I think it simplifies it for me, but I'm going to find out. 5 divided by, in parentheses, this has to be in parentheses, 1 minus 2i. Yeah, it's 1 plus 2i. Did that do the simplifying for me? Multiplied both sides by 1 plus 2i, so you get 5 plus 10i over 5, which is 1 plus 2i. Yep, it's simplified. It simplified that expression for me, so your calculator can handle pretty much all this stuff. Finally, I think this is the last thing we're going to do. Yep, the quadratic formula. If you want to learn to program this in your calculator, I will actually give you extra credit for that. You can watch a video online that I haven't made, but there's ones you can find that'll teach you how to program. But if you can actually learn how to do basic programming in general and program other things, there's lots of points that I'll give you for that. But let me show you how to do this in your calculator. The quadratic formula is, well, I can pull it up here first so we can look at it. Negative b, which in this case is going to be negative 7 or positive 7. Notice I put the parenthesis first, after the parenthesis, plus the square root of, I can't do plus or minus, so I just do plus the square root of, and in parentheses I'm going to have b squared, which is negative 7 squared, like this. So right now I have 1, 2, 3 open parentheses, because when I hit the square root button, it gave me that parenthesis there. You don't have to put negative 7. I usually just put positive 7. In fact, I usually put 49. I don't even bother trying to calculate this because I know 7 squared is 49. Keep going, minus 4 times a times c. Now I'm going to need 1, 2, 3 closed parentheses because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 open parentheses. So I have to have 5 closed parentheses. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Divide that by 2a, which is going to be 2 times 2. That also has to be in parentheses. You can't forget those parentheses. Most people do. Press enter. There's one of my solutions. Now if I press second enter, it pulls up my previous screen, my previous entry. I can go back and change this plus to a minus real quick. There's my other one. If you get a fraction, is that really how that factors? I guess it is. If you get a fraction, you can always make it a decimal. I know that one's obviously 1/2. Press the math button. The first option is arrow frac. It makes it a fraction for you. Thank you. Hope that was helpful.